Alright guys, good night everybody. Um, so this is my third free session for you guys. Just let me know if you all can hear me before I begin though. Alright, great. Right, so what I'm going to be focusing tonight on, I'll be looking at relations, functions, and graphs. Right, I can see how much I can do tonight, so we'll see. Alright, I know exam is right around the corner, right? All right, so let's take a look at this question here. We have two functions, f and g, right? F of x is equal to 3x plus 1, and g of x is x squared plus 1, right? And we want to work out, let's start with part A. So in part A, we want to work out, so we know that f of x is equal to 3x plus 1, and we want to work out f of minus 2. Now, all we need to do here, we're going to substitute x is equal to minus 2 into this function. So this is going to be 3 multiplied by minus 2 plus 1. 3 by minus 2 is minus 6 plus 1. And this is going to give me minus 5, right? So that is f of minus 2, right? Now, part B now, we want to find, so that was part A. In part B, we want to get a composite function, which is g f of x, right? Now, some students have a little trouble trying to understand what is being asked here. But essentially, what's happening here is that we are taking this function f, right? And you're going to plug that function into g, right? So basically, whatever we have for x, which is this whole thing here, you're going to plug that as x into your function. Sorry, I said it wrong. Hold on. Right, gf of x, right? So what we're doing, we're taking this, right? This is f here, and you're plugging this into this function here. That's what you're doing, right? So basically, you're going to write 3x plus 1 squared plus 1, right? So what we are doing, we are taking the function f, and we are plugging the function f into g. So this here is what we call a composite function, right? So this here is what we call a composite function, right? So what we can do, we can leave our answer like this, or if in the exam they say to simplify, we need to simplify this, right? So 3x plus 1 squared is the same as saying 3x plus 1, right, multiplied by 3x plus 1, right? And we still add in 1 here. When I multiply this brackets here, what I need to do, I need to take my first term and multiply by the first term in the second bracket. Then I need to take this first term and multiply by this, right? So 3x by 3x is going to give you 9x squared. Then 3x by 1 will give me plus 3x. Then I have to take this 1 and multiply by this 3x. That's going to give me plus 3x. And then we have this term by this term, which is going to give me 1. So therefore, my final answer is going to be 9x squared plus 6x plus 2, right? Right, so I know you all are seeing the answer properly there. Something is blocking you. So the answer should be 9x squared plus 6x plus 2, right? So that's my function g f of x, right? So that's part B. Now, the next part, part C, you want to work out f squared of x, right? Now, f of x, so this is part C we're working out here. F of x is equal to 3x plus 1, right? And we want to work out f squared of x, right? Now, f squared of x, what some students do, they might say, here what? Let's go and do this, right? Some students do this. They actually do this in the exam. This is wrong. So don't go in the exam and do that, please, right? F squared of x is actually a composite function as well. It is f of f. That's what that means, right? So what we are doing in this case here, we are taking the function f, right? And we are plugging that function into itself, right? So look at this. F of x is equal to 3x plus 1, right? Now I'm just going to write f of x again, right? So if you want to find f of f, you're going to take the function f and you're going to plug it as x into the second function, right? So what this is going to be, so f of f is simply going to be 3, open brackets, 3x plus 1 plus 1. If I simplify this, I'm going to say 3 multiplied by 3x is going to give me 9x. Then 3 multiplied by 3 is going to give me 3 plus 1. And you're going to get 9x plus 4, right? So that's my function f squared of x, right? Right, so that's part C, right? So we still need to work out part D. So in part D now, we want to find f of 1 plus g of minus 2. So you want to work out f of 1 plus g of minus 2, right? So our functions are f of x is 3x plus 1. And g of x is equal to x squared plus 1. So if you have a question like this in the real exam, all you're going to do, you're going to find f of 1 first. So this is going to be 3 multiplied by 1 plus 1. So this is going to be 3 plus 1. And that's going to give me 4, right? So that's f of 1. Then I need to work out g of minus 2, right? So this is going to be minus 2 squared plus 1. Minus 2 multiplied by minus 2 is going to give me positive 4 plus 1, and that's going to give me 5. So therefore, f of 1 plus g of minus 2 is going to be 4 plus 5, and that's going to give me 9, right? So these are all types of questions that CSEC can bring in the exam, right? And the last part, they want me to find f inverse, right, which is the inverse of my function. So f of x is equal to 3x plus 1, right? And what I want to do, I want to work out my inverse. That's what they call this. This here is called the inverse of a function, right? This is called the inverse of a function. So there are certain steps that we need to use in order to find that. My first step is to let y equal to 3x plus 1 as step 1. The next thing that we do is to interchange x and y. What that simply means is that wherever we see x, we're going to put y, and wherever you see y, you're going to put x. So therefore, x is equal to 3y plus 1. And then what we need to do here now, we need to make y the subject of the formula. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to write that as 3x plus 1 is equal to x. Therefore, 3y is equal to x minus 1. and therefore y is equal to x minus 1 divided by 3. So the last thing I need to do is to simply write f inverse is equal to x minus 1 over 3. Right? So what I'm doing here, I'm doing questions that are likely to come in your exam, right? So we need to understand how to do those kinds of questions, right? So for those of you who have not liked or subscribed to my channel as yet, please do so, right? This is just additional work that I'm doing here besides my normal online classes, right? All right, so that's it. That's it for the first question. That's a typical exam question, right? Right, so my second question here now, right? Let's see what we have to do here now. So this is a different style of question, right? In this question, again, I have two functions. I have f of x is equal to 2 minus 5x, right? And I have g of x is equal to x squared. In the first part of the question, you want to work out fg of minus 2, right? Fg of minus 2. Now, there are basically two ways to do this question, but this is the usual way that I tell my students to handle this. What we should do is to first find g of minus 2, and the answer we get, we're going to plug that into f, right? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to first find g of minus 2, and that's going to be minus 2 squared. Minus 2 squared is the same as saying minus 2 multiplied by minus 2, and this is going to give me 4. Now, this answer that I got here, right, I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug that into the function f. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to find f of 4. This is my function here. So it's going to be equal to 2 minus 5 multiplied by 4. So this is going to be 2 minus 5 by 4 is minus 20. So 2 minus 20 is going to give me minus 18. So therefore, fg of minus 2 is going to be minus 18, right? Now, part B now, the question is asking, find the value of x for which f of x is equal to 12. Now, remember, if you have a function, right? Think of a function as this machine that takes values coming in here. It takes x values and it basically spits out f of x values, right? Now, what they are telling me here is that the output of the function is 12, and what is my input? That's what they're basically asking me to do, right? Now, f of x is 2 minus 5x. F of x is 2 minus 5x, right? And in the question, they are saying that find the value of x for which f of x is 12. So f of x is equal to 12. So all you guys need to do here to figure out what the value of x is to simply do this. Put 2 minus 5x equal to 12. Because this is f of x and this is also f of x. So that means that 2 minus 5x must equal to 12. So now we're trying to solve this to figure out what x is. So minus 5x is 12 minus 2. So minus 5x is equal to 10. So therefore x is equal to 10 divided by minus 5. Therefore x is equal to minus 2. So that means that if I had my function here, right, and I plug minus 2 into the function, what actually comes out here is 12. Right? So that is what we just did there. Well, all right, so I'm just looking at somebody's chat here, right? Now, because I have limited time, what you guys can do, right? You can always go back to the video. This video has been recorded, so you can always go back to it, right? Because I don't have the time to stop and wait for the answers, basically, right? So sorry about that. Right, so that is part B. Now part C now, we want to find g f of x. So again, f of x is equal to two minus 5x, right? And I am asked to find g f of x. So you want to find g f of x, right? Now what that means is that I'm going to take this is a composite function again. So I'm going to take f of x and I'm going to plug that into the function g. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all of this, because this is my function f, and I'm going to plug that into this. So basically what we're going to have is 2 minus 5x all squared. So this is just like the previous question. We have 2 minus 5x, and you are multiplying that by 2 minus 5x, right? When you're multiplying two brackets, right, there's an order in which you must follow. So the first term by the first term, right, that's 2 by 2, that's going to give me 4. Then 2 by minus 5 is going to give you minus 10x. Minus 5 by 2 is going to give you minus 10x. And then we have minus 5x by minus 5x. That's going to give me plus 25x squared. When I simplify this, I'm going to get 4 minus 10x is going to give you minus 20x plus 25x. 25x squared, right? Right, so I'm seeing lots of questions about how long is it live, right? It might be about an hour, a little more than an hour, right? I'll see how many questions I can get done. Yes, I'll try to do a live on trigonometry, right? I'll see what I can organize. All right, so that's question 2. Let's see what else we have here now. Right, so we have a little different one here, right? I have two functions, f of x and g of x, right? Now, this one here is one that sometimes gives students trouble. So let's see what I'm asking here, right? In this question, the first part, they want to know the value of x for which f of x is equal to 0, right? Find the value of x for which f of x is equal to 0. Now, 0 divided by any number is going to give me 0, right? And any number divided by 0 is going to be undefined. If you all try to use your calculator to work this out, you can't work this out, right? Now these are two important properties here in order for me to answer part A and part B. Now the first part, part A, determine the value of x for which f of x is 0. So this is part A here. All you guys need to do is to take the numerator, which is the top part, that's this, and put that equal to 0. So you're going to put 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. So 2x is equal to 1, and therefore x is equal to a half, right? Now, pay attention to these kinds of questions. These are things that students ignore, and you could be given this in a real exam. So that's the answer for part A. For part B now, they want to know the value of x for which a function is undefined. Now this function here can only be undefined if this bottom piece here, or the denominator, is equal to 0. That is the only time that the function is undefined. So for part B, all you guys need to do is to put x minus 5 equal to 0, and therefore x is equal to 5. That's it. That's all we need to do here to get that mark. Right, so some of you all asking if these are past paper questions. These are my own questions, right? Right, part C now, right? Part C is one of those questions that can be tricky as well. So pay attention to this one. This is the hardest inverse you can be given in the exam, right? So part C. my function is 2x minus 1. So f of x is equal to 2x minus 1 all over x minus 5. Right? And we are being asked to find the inverse here. This is what we want to find. Right? Now, like I said in the previous question with the inverse, there's a process that we need to follow. The first step is to let y equal to 2x minus 1 over x minus 5. The next step is to interchange x and y. That's the next step. So basically, anywhere we see y, you're going to put x, and anywhere you see x, you're going to put y. So therefore, x is equal to 2y minus 1 over y minus 5, right? Now, the next step is to make y the subject of the formula. Now, this is where students have a little trouble, right? And the easiest thing I can tell you to do is that on the left-hand side, write that x as x over 1. That's going to help you tremendously, right? And the next step, what I usually advise is that you cross multiply. You say x multiplied by y minus 5 is equal to 1 multiplied by 2y minus 1, right? So basically what we are saying 2y minus 1 is equal to x open brackets y minus 5, right? So 2y minus 1 is equal to, we need to remove the brackets here. So this is xy minus 5x, right? Now don't get lost. What we are trying to do is to make y the subject of the formula. That's our objective at this stage here. So let's move this across here, right? And I'm going to carry all the y's on one side. So 2y minus xy is equal to minus 5x plus 1. Now this is one of those questions where we have to use factorization in order to find the inverse function. If you notice on the left hand side, you have two terms in y. This is in y, this is in y here. So what I will do, I will factorize. So this becomes y open brackets 2 minus x is equal to minus 5x plus 1. So therefore y is equal to minus 5x plus 1 over 2 minus x. So therefore I'm going to write that the inverse function is equal to minus 5x plus 1 over 2 minus x. Right? Somebody's asking about the SBA, right? Once you have a good mark in your SBA, then if you want to get a grade 1, you have to get close to full marks in the multiple choice. And if you just make a half mark in the paper 2, you're good to go, right? Now, one thing to note, with these types of inverse, right? Some students may get something that looks like this, slightly different, right? So some students might get 5x minus 1 over minus 2 plus x. Please note that this answer and this answer are equivalent, right? They are the same, right? It looks slightly different, but they are the same answers, right? No matter what you substitute into both functions, both inverse, sorry, you're going to get the same answer, right? All right, and the last part we need to work out is a composite function again, right? So f of x is 2x minus 1 all over x minus 5, right? And g of x is equal to x plus 1. And we want to find fg of x, right? So this is a composite function we're looking at again. So to do this, what we're going to do, we're going to take the function g and we're going to plug that into the function f. So basically, everything that we have for g, which is this, you're going to plug that into this function here. So you're going to plug it here, and you're also going to plug that value across here as well. So this is going to be 2 open brackets x plus 1 minus 1 all over x plus 1 minus 5. So we need to simplify this. On the numerator, you're going to get 2x plus 2 minus 1. On the denominator, you're going to get x plus 1 minus 5. And when we simplify this, we're going to get 2x. 2 minus 1 is 1. And 1 minus 5 is minus 4. So this is x minus 4. Right, so that's basically what we can be given in a function question, right? Now let's look at some other questions that they could ask us. So, question 4, right? Question 4, I have 2 points, right? I have a point P, which is given by -1 and 3. I have a point Q, which is given by 3, 11, right? And the first part of the question, we want to work out what is the gradient of the line segment PQ, right? So this is Q, which is 3, 11, right? Now what I normally tell students to do is label, right? Label your coordinates. So when I say label, I'm going to call this x1, and I'm going to call this y1, right? I'm going to call this x2, and I'm going to call that y2. Now, I'm going to be using some formulas here that are not given to you in the exam, but you need to know it. So for example, gradient is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, right? So all I'm going to do, I'm going to take those values that I have from P and Q. So y2 is 11, so it's 11 minus 3 divided by 3 minus 1, right? Because x2 is 3 and x1 is minus 1, right? Now 11 minus 3 is going to give me 8 divided by 3 minus 1 is the same as saying 3 plus 1, so that's going to give me 4. So this gradient here is going to be 2, right? So this gradient here is going to be 2, right? So like I said, that formula is not given to you in the exam. You still need to know it, right? Right, so that's part A. Part B now, you want to work out midpoint. So again, there's a formula for midpoint. So midpoint is given by this formula. It is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, right, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, right? So midpoint of a line segment, we just add in the x coordinates, divide by 2, we add the y coordinates, and we divide by 2. So this is going to be -1 plus 3 divided by 2, comma, 3 plus 11 divided by 2. So -1 plus 3 is going to give me 2 divided by 2, comma, 11 plus 3 is 14 over 2. So therefore, my midpoint is going to be 1, 7, right? So that midpoint formula, like I said, it's not given to you in the exam, so you need to learn it, right? So that is part B. Part C, you need to be able to find the length of a line segment, right? So again, I'm going to write down what P is, minus 1, 3. Q is 311, right? And we want to find the length. So the length of PQ, now the previous slide I labeled this as x1, y1, this was x2, y2, and what we're going to do, we're going to apply the formula for length, right, which is given by x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, and you're going to find the square root. Now that formula is actually based on Pythagoras' theorem. That's what it's based on, right? So x2 minus x1 is going to be 3 minus minus 1 squared plus y2, which is 11 minus 3 squared, square root. So 3 minus minus 1 is the same as saying 4 squared plus 11 minus 3 is 8. So that's 8 squared. So what we're going to get here, 4 4s are 16 plus 8 8s are 64. We're going to find the square root. So this here is going to be the square root of 80, right? That's it. So the square root of 80, right, is going to give me 8.94. So you're going to put 8.94 units. Right, so we've just looked at 3 different formulas here that you all need to know for the exam. So please make sure you learn off those formulas. You need to know how to answer those questions, right? Right, so this is another way we can be asked a question as well, right? So we have a line L that is shown here, right? And the first part of the question, they said state the coordinates of the X intercept, right? We want to know the coordinates of the X intercept. Now, whenever they ask you for the coordinates of the X intercept, that simply means where does this graph cut my X axis? So remember, your X axis is here. So it's cutting at this point here. That's my X axis here. So therefore, that coordinate there is going to be minus, right, 1.5. So you can use a decimal here or a fraction if you want. So that's minus 1.5, comma 0. That's the coordinates of my X intercept. Now, in part B, they want to know what are the coordinates of the Y intercept. So if you look carefully, this is where my Y intercept is. You are cutting your X axis at that point. Now the coordinates of that point there is going to be 0, 3, right? Just remember, when you are stating a coordinate, you always give the X value first and then the Y value. That's essentially what we do, right? So let's see what else do they want here. They want to know what is the gradient of this line, right? Now, some students, they are custom using a formula for gradient, but when CSEC gives them a line, they are not sure what to do. What I suggest you guys do when you're working out gradient, all you need to do is to select 2 points on your line. Any 2 points you want, you're going to get the same answer, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select 2 points. To tell you the truth, I'm just going to use this point as 1. So this is 0, 3. And I'm going to select another point. I'm going to use this point up here, which is going to be 2, 7, right? So what I'm doing, I'm selecting 2 points on that straight line to allow me to work out the gradient of the line, right? So it's 0, 3 and 2, 7. So it's 0, 3 and it's 2, 7, right? I want to work out gradient, so there's a formula for gradient. So gradient is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So this is going to be x1, y1. I'm going to label this as x2, y2. And now I'm going to substitute those values into my formula. So y2 is 7. So this is 7 minus 3 all over 2 minus 0. 7 minus 3 is 4. And 2 minus 0 is 2. So 4 divided by 2 is going to give me 2. So therefore, this here is the gradient of my line, right? That's what they said. They said determine the gradient of the line L. That's what we do. We select 2 points on the line and then we work out the gradient. The next part of the question says determine the equation of the line L. Now, there is an advantage when CSEC gives us a graph like this because you already know what the y-intercept is, right? You already know what the y-intercept is. Now, the equation or the general equation for a straight line is given by y is equal to mx plus c, right? Where m, so this m here that we see in here, is my gradient, right? And this c here is my y-intercept, right? Now there's no fancy calculation here to write down what the equation of this line is. You already worked out the gradient. You got 2. You already know what the y-intercept is, right? That's this point here. That's your y-intercept. It's cutting at 0, 3. So the equation of this line, right, is going to be y is equal to, the gradient is 2, x plus 3. That's the equation of the straight line. There's no need to do any fancy calculations here, right? Right, now, part E now, determine the equation of the line passing through the point P, which is 3, 2. Right, so we have a point P which is 3, 2. So we have a point here. This is the point P, right? It is perpendicular to the line L, right? Now, what does that mean? Whenever we have two lines that are perpendicular, it means that they meet each other at 90 degrees. So you see this blue dashed line that I'm drawing here? It is passing through the point P, but at the same time, it is cutting the line L at 90 degrees. So that's what they're talking about here. Now, whenever two lines are perpendicular, if I have a line here, and I have a line here, and they are cutting at 90 degrees, and the gradient of one of them is, let's say, m1, and the gradient of the second one is m2, there's a property about perpendicular lines. When I multiply the gradient of one by the gradient of the second one, I should get minus 1. That is a property that we need to know when it comes to perpendicular lines. When we multiply their gradients, I will get minus 1, right? So, here's what's happening here. You already know the gradient of L. The gradient of L is 2. The gradient of the second line, that blue dashed line, can anybody tell me what that gradient should be? If the gradient of L is 2, can you tell me what should be the gradient of that dashed line there? The dashed line passing through P. right? So I'm seeing a lot of people telling me minus a half, and that is true. It is minus a half, right? It is minus a half. So the gradient of this line here should be minus a half, right? Should be minus a half. And the reason why we are saying that is that if I take 2 and I multiply by minus a half, that's the only way I'm going to get minus 1, right? So some students learn it like this. If the gradient of one line is 2, then all I need to do is to invert it. So it becomes 1 over 2, and we put a minus sign in front of it. So the gradient of this line that is passing through the point P is going to be minus a half. So we're going to say that, we're going to write that. So this is part E that we're working out. So the gradient of L is equal to 2, right? Therefore, the gradient of line perpendicular to L is simply going to be minus a half, right? But remember, this line is passing through this point here that we said is 3, 2, right? So this is what we know. We're trying to find the equation of this line. So it's going to be y is equal to minus a half x plus c. So I'm going to use this point here in order to figure out what is c. So when x is equal to 3, y is equal to 2. That's from this point P, we know that. So therefore 2 is equal to minus a half multiplied by 3 plus c, right? So therefore 2 is equal to minus 3 over 2 plus c. So therefore c is equal to 2 plus 3 over 2, right? So that is what? As 2 plus 3 over 2, right? That's 3.5 or 7 over 2, right? So c is equal to 7 over 2. So therefore, the equation of the required line right is going to be y is equal to minus a half x plus 7 over 2. Right, so this is a typical exam question. They give you a graph and they ask you to find certain information from the graph, right? Now, this one here now, question 6. I have a line. It has an equation 2y. So this part A here. The equation of the line is 2y plus 3x is equal to 4, right? The first part of the question says state the gradient of L. Can you all tell me what that gradient of that line is? Because that's a common problem that students have. What is the gradient of that line? See, some people saying 3, some people saying 3 over 2, right? Now here's something you have to remember. You have to remember, in order for me to determine the equation, to determine the gradient, given the equation, it has to be written in this format before I can see that. It must be written in that format. That equation as it is not written in that format. So I need to rearrange it first before I can determine the gradient. So 2y is equal to minus 3x plus 4. That's step 1. I need to leave y on the left hand side and carry everything across to the right hand side. The next thing now, I have 2y. So I don't want 2y. I need to divide every single thing by 2. So this becomes y. This is going to be minus 3 over 2x plus 4 divided by 2 is going to give me 2. So therefore, look at what the gradient actually is. The gradient is actually minus 3 over 2. So that's a big mistake that students make in the exam. So I notice everybody telling me 3 over 2. That's a big mistake you can make in the exam. It has to be written in the format y is equal to mx plus c. If you don't do that, then you're not going to get a gradient. Right, the next thing they want now. So they want us to state the coordinates of the X intercept, right? So this is part B. So the equation of the line was 2y plus 3x equal 4. Right? And what they want us to work out what is the X intercept. Now, whenever they give you an equation and they want you to find the X intercept, these are some things you need to remember. On a graph, right, this here is called my x-axis and this here is called my y-axis. But the x-axis is also called the line y is equal to 0 and the x-axis is also called the line x is equal to 0. So if you want to find the x-intercept, that is, where is that line cut in my x-axis, all you need to do, you're going to say when y is equal to 0, because that's my x-intercept. Y is equal to 0 here. You're going to put 2 multiplied by 0 plus 3x is equal to 4. 2 by 0 is 0. So you end up with 3x on the left side is equal to 4. And therefore x is 4 over 3. So therefore my x-intercept, right, is going to be 4 over 3, because you need to write the x coordinate first. So it's 4 over 3, 0. Right? That's how you do a question like this in the real exam. Right? So some of you all, listen, let me back up a little bit. Some of you all asking why is negative. Look, this 3x here, when you carry it across to the right hand side of this equation, it's going to become negative. Right? So you had positive 3x on the left side. When you carry it across the equal sign, it's going to become negative 3x. That's where that negative came from. Right? Now, the reason why I have these questions here, these are the common mistakes that students make. That's what I'm doing, right? So that's my x-intercept, right? In part C of the question, we want to know what is the coordinates of the y-intercept. So we have 2y plus 3x is equal to 4. Now, on your y-axis or your y-intercept, x is equal to 0. So all we're going to say for your y-intercept, right? In this case here, x is equal to 0, right? So this is going to be 2y plus 3 multiplied by 0 is equal to 4. So 2y is equal to 4, and therefore y is equal to 4 divided by 2. So y is equal to 2. So therefore my y-intercept, right, is going to be 0, 2. So that's how you determine the intercepts when you are given the equation of a line. Are you all here? On my end, I can see audio is clear on my end. Try refreshing the page if you're not getting audio. Alright, so let's do the last part of the question here, right? They want us to determine the equation of the line passing through the point Q, which is minus 2, 4, and it's parallel to the line L. Now, we already worked out the gradient of L, right? You worked out the gradient of L. Now, this is one property when it comes to parallel lines now. If the gradient of one of them is M, and you have a parallel line, the gradient of the parallel line will also be M. So gradients of parallel lines are the same, right? So let's write this down. So gradient of L, right? We said we got minus 3 over 2. So this is minus 3 over 2, right? So that's the gradient of L. So the gradient of line parallel to L, right, should be the exact same thing, right? But the thing is, this line here now is passing through the point Q, which is given by minus 2, 4. Minus 2, 4, right? So, basically, you have a line, right? Now this line here, this might be L, right? You have a point Q, right? And we are trying to find the equation of a line that is parallel to L but passing through the point Q. So this equation of this line is going to be y is equal to minus 3 over 2x plus c. Because remember, the general form of any straight line is y equal mx plus c. So all we need to do now, we just need to figure out what is this c here. And to do that, I must use this point here. So when x is equal to minus 2, y has to be equal to 4. So therefore 4 is equal to minus 3 over 2 multiplied by minus 2 plus c. So this is going to be 4 is equal to minus 3 over 2 by minus 2 is going to give me positive 3. So therefore c is equal to 4 minus 3. So c is equal to 1. So therefore the equation of line through P passing through Q, right, is given by y is equal to minus 3 over 2x plus 1. Right, so I have a next question here, right? I have a graph. It shows the line, this line here, L, which is given by y plus 2x is equal to 4. The first part, part A, state the coordinates of the X intercept. Can you all tell me what the answer is there for part A? What is the answer for part A? State the coordinates of the X intercept. What you all think it is? Alright, I've seen people telling me 2, 0. So you want to get the coordinates of the x-intercept. That is, where is this thing cutting my x-axis? That's this point here, right? So yes, the answer for this one here is going to be 2, 0. What about part B? What are the coordinates of the y-intercept? What you going to say there? right? So I'm seeing lots of people telling me 0, 4. Yeah, it is 0, 4. Look, it's cutting this point here. So that coordinate is going to be 0, 4, right? So I have a line, right? And I know what the x-intercept is and what the y-intercept is. Now part C now, they said the function f of x is given by, somebody writes it here, f of x is minus 7 over 2 x plus 7 over 2, right? And what we want to do, we want to complete this table here. So what I want from you all, I want you all to take minus 3 and substitute it into this function here and tell me what I should get here. Use your calculator if you have to. Alright, so let's see what you all doing though. I'm not too sure if you all doing the correct thing, right? So let's go back here. Right, now minus 3. So you're going to press minus 3 on the calculator, right? Sorry, wait, hold on here. Minus 3. Oh no, wait, hold on. I just wrote something wrong here. Hold on, huh? This is minus a half. Right? I'm not watching that here. It's minus a half x plus 7 over 2. Right? Sorry about that. So let's do this here now. So what we're going to do, we're going to say minus a half. So you're going to press 1 over 2. Right? So I'm using a fraction in this calculator here. It's a very handy function. So minus a half multiplied by minus 3. So you press 3 with the minus sign in front of it. You're going to get 1.5 plus 7 over 2. And I'm going to get 5. Right? That's what we should get. We should be getting 5. Right? Which is, I think, why most of you all got that. Right? So therefore, this should have been 5. Right? And the second value here, I'm going to plug 3 into this. So that is minus a half, right? Multiplied by 3 equal plus 7 over 2. And you're going to get 2, right? So I'm getting 2 for this one here, right? On the same axis now, we want to draw this graph. We want to draw this graph f of x, right? Now, 3, 2, I'm going to plot 3, 2. That's going to be this value here. This is 3, 2, right? But I realize I kind of cut this graph a little too short, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work out f of 0 instead, right? Because I can't plot minus 3, 5. So I'm going to find f of 0. So this 0 plus 7 over 2, right? So 7 over 2 is going to give me 3.5. So therefore, this point on the graph is going to be 0, 3.5, right? So this here is going to be this point here. Now, they said on the same axis, draw the graph f of x, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a line. So let's get rid of that calculator here. And let's draw my line. So let's draw a green line. Right, now that line must pass through this point here, this point that we plotted, right? And it should also pass through this point here, right? Right, somebody's asking why should it pass through those 2 points? It has to pass through those 2 points because what we've done, we've plugged values into the function. We plugged minus 3 into it, we plugged 3 into it, and we also plugged 0 into it, right? Right, now, this part of the question here, right, the last part, part E, right, part E here, using a graph, right, solve this equation here. You're trying to solve this equation. Now, what I want you to understand here is that that line L, so this line here, right, is actually y is equal to minus 2x plus 4, right? That's what that line is here. The other line, the green line, right, that green line is this. This line here is my green line, and the equation of that green line is y is equal to minus a half x plus 7 over 2, right? That's what that line is there, right? Now, the question is asking, solve this equation here. If you notice here, on the left-hand side, that is actually the equation, right? Minus 2x plus 4. And on the right-hand side, this equation is y is equal to minus a half x plus 7 over 2, right? So what that means is that what the question is asking me to do is, where do those 2 lines intersect? That's what the question is asking. Where do those 2 lines intersect, right? So all we need to do to finish this question or to solve this question is to figure out what is this coordinate here. That's all you're doing, right? So for part E, all you need to do is to figure out where do those 2 lines intersect. That's it. somebody's asking if you can put any value. Well, basically, you'll have to follow the table that they give you, right? If they don't give you a table, then you can plug in any x values you want once you can plot it on the graph, right? So guys, so these are the kinds of questions that we can get on relations, functions, and graphs. We just did some function questions. We did gradient of a line, midpoint, length of a line, equation of a perpendicular line, equation of a parallel line. Those are things we need to know for the exam, right? So this is all the time I have for this afternoon, right? If I do get a chance tomorrow in the daytime, I may have another session, because what I want to cover the quadratic function, right? So there's a particular question that I suspect they're going to bring in the exam, and you need to know how to answer that particular question, right? All right, so let me answer some question here. Right, so decoder, why I did not use the -3 is that when I cut the graph to put it on the slide here, I think I cut it a little too short. So if you notice, I'm missing x = -3 on the graph, so I couldn't plot it, right? That's why, right? And yes, the intersection of those two lines is what the solution of the last equation is, right? That's it, right? So like I said, guys, so the next session I'm going to focus on the quadratic function. I suspect a question is going to come on that in the exam, right? So guys, that's it for me. Have a good night, everybody. Be safe, right? And maybe I'll see you all tomorrow. Yeah, I can't say what time because it's really when I get a chance, when I have free time. So what you need to do is to hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. So every time I go live, you will get, you'll know when I go live, right?